Greetings. My name is Daiana Sheludkevych and I am from Kharkiv, Ukraine. At the moment I obtain a war refugee status in Czech Republic, having arrived here in the beginning of March 2022. This whole time, up till now, I have been actively experiencing different aspects of war trauma on myself, being swallowed by it and trying to regain some control over my lost, disrupted and partially destroyed life. Before we jump into my story, I would like to introduce myself as an artist and storyteller with academic aspirations to become a psychology researcher in the field of rehabilitation, post-traumatic growth, resilience building and peace building. But this is a part I'll get back to a bit later. A year and a half ago, I was forced to embark on the very unexpected journey, which included me losing my home, my country, my society, my culture, my friends and family, my beloved ones. My career, my opportunities, my wishes and goals, dreams, and comprehending of how to live at all. I lost my safe space and opportunity to strengthen my psyche, as I have already had a chain of traumatizing events before the full-scale invasion of Russia into Ukraine. And initially I was intending to take a year of 2022 to heal and recover, which never happened. Instead, the trauma added, breaking through the ceiling of all possible limits of pain one can withstand without completely losing orientation in one's life. I lost. This whole time I've been going through it firsthand, documenting my thoughts and states when I could, non-stop looking for ways of holding it, coping with it, readjusting to a new horrible reality, and necessity to continue living with no sense of safety anymore. No feeling of belonging or sense of meaning for myself and my own life. In a pre-war life, I had 6 years of client experience in psychotherapy. So I already kind of knew how to notice how this specific trauma affected me, which protective mechanisms came into action, which coping strategies and instruments worked and which didn't. What the combination of complications were, the type and course of dynamics, and which transformations happened to my psyche and my body, both as traumatically destructive, so resilience building ones, I would say, as a result of radical acceptance at some point. I'm not sure if I can speak of post-traumatic growth right now, simply because it's not a post-trauma yet. On my experience, shorter periods of direct subjection to war trauma when escaping and then shortly coming back to an active war zone, interchanged with longer periods of refugee experience abroad, causing me to deal with intense vicarious trauma, interlaced with PTSD, expressions of different intensity, frequency and dynamics. And I'm not even speaking about immense survivor guilt and shame to continue living my life. Before becoming a refugee, I actively worked as a photographer with a very keen interest on psychological aspect of it. Especially my attention was dedicated to portraying a body in different psychological states, and I was looking for ways of accepting one's physicality, authenticity and sexuality through the prism of art of photography. All the mental challenges and traumas I was dealing with myself fueled this work, as well as my motivation to study psychology on a deeper, more professional level further on. So when I faced such a huge and complex concept as the trauma of war, genocide, culturicide and linguicide, my motivation to obtain a second degree in the field became adamant. I decided I want to contribute my experience and forces to researching of current cases and to solution seeking. Notably, this very resolution became a thread that tied my disrupted life to a sense of meaning, potential sense of belonging and rebuilding my life, myself, my ability to love, hope, and believe again. I'm still in the process, but I see it as an opportunity to connect with other survivors going through the same processes, sharing experience, theoretical and empirical knowledge, and thus empowering each other to rebuild, regrow, return to our lives and ourselves. I deem this potentially could give us ability to soothe and help many others in need, a healing power, so to speak. I will name the elephant in the room and outline the fact I feel this imposter complex this very moment, as I can't name myself yet as an academic researcher in the full meaning of this term, of course. However, though lacking a proper academic background, the whole already received experience doesn't let my mind rest, and I feel constantly challenged with questions which evoke more questions than answers. I know the dynamics, aware of existing elements making for such experience, and I'm looking forward to discover and denominate more hidden parts of it, and always eager to hear stories of others, to drive even more existing components and add them to the pool of common experience. Therefore, I feel I should speak, even though I'm in the very beginning of self-establishment as your colleague. Recently, I participated in the summer school on migration studies organized by the Faculty of Science of Charles University in Prague in partnership with UNIC and IOM Prague. And this became a key moment for my self-search. I realized I belong, I connect, as well as I can share and contribute. Being a part of a group consisting of researchers, academics, specialists and practitioners in the field, many of whom are war survivors and refugees themselves, I felt this could be right for me. It's as if many scattered shards came into one piece, and suddenly I could see an outline of a picture ahead, which I couldn't have seen before, no matter how hard I tried. I felt I could make a tentative plan and start at least feebly identifying myself in this new life. My yet vague idea circles around researching similarities and differences for various groups of war survivors, refugees and migrants, specifically concentrating on experience of women in such position and what makes it crucial for rehabilitation and adjustment to a new life after such a breaking traumatic event or series of events. I feel keen to explore the levels of complexity for different groups, to return to the process of life itself in the complex meaning of this word, and to be able to differentiate between means that are good and means that are effective and actually working. This is a crucial point here because, as still being a refugee myself and not having gone through the process of integration and restoration fully, I feel how vital it is for me as a person affected to receive effective help. And this is exactly the argument in favor for researchers with war surviving background. Before we step any further, I would like to stop and highlight the existing potential for stigmatization of so-called victims or so-called affected as only such, which is present already on the level of supposedly impartial terminology at work. We must be very careful about naming and about attitude in work when placing in life human being under a specific category in our research. I notice how I adopt even such a thing as self-stigma when simply reading another article on vicarious trauma, PTSD, psychological aspects of being a genocide survivor or a forced refugee, and in attempts to deconstruct my state, to learn more of it and figure out how to deal with it better, I end up painting my own Dorian Gray portrait, which then brings an effect very opposite to the one intended. So applying this example on the cases of interaction between a researcher and a target group, we can already notice the possible danger of such reenactment. We may sometimes forget that research groups are containing more potential depth and answers than we may sometimes give them credit for. That's why I believe that experience of researchers for survivors brings a crucial point to the matter in question. The goal of each research conducted is not only to notice and describe, but also it's important to remind ourselves why we are doing it. Hopefully to give an impulse to changes for better. Personal experience of researchers war survivors encases the ability to approach the task with careful mindfulness towards this aspect of work, see more of it, see more out of it, which I believe carries great potential. By the way, we are using the term war survivor, which does better justice and empowers the person, though I see the potential for further differentiation even here. The thing is, right now all researchers working in Ukraine are automatically falling under this category. And when the war is over, there will be a fact that some survived war more than the others, so to speak. Obviously, you can't compare experience of researchers living and working in Ukraine right now and actually going through an active re-traumatization while working with trauma in others. And then experience of researchers who escaped the war zones and resettled in other countries, but then experiences and trauma of losing their homes, access to their society and culture, experiencing guilt to be in a safer place, but facing tons of problems you don't have to face if you stay in your own country and have a lack of preserving your own home. Experience of Ukraine is interesting in these terms, as it allows more diversity for all of the groups, maybe even too diverse to get your head around. Another important but tricky point is about post-traumatic growth and resilience building strategies and possibilities. I'm cracking this one all the time in my head, checking with myself and world around what's the combination for that one. I think I won't exaggerate saying these are areas we all need to have as clear as possible. First of all, there isn't such a thing as too much resilience, obviously. Being a shaky construct itself, it is an easy thing to tremble and shatter at any point in the world we live in. And it awakes something in me when we call difficult topics depressive. Of course it's depressive, but if we choose to work with it, we might as well build up our own mastery, train our brain and body to cope with the pressure, and arm ourselves with a set of instruments that will help us step beyond the first thing reactive stress acting. I am keen on looking into it more professionally, especially after having gone through the dialectical behavioral therapy training course just recently and having seen the very positive dynamics for my own state. The best thing is once you survive and learn how to not just survive but restore the diverse areas of your life with time, you can use these tools further on many aspects of your life and work. And speaking of post-traumatic growth, I won't be actually speaking of it because, as I have already mentioned, it's not a post-trauma for me yet, but very much an ongoing one. However, I'm eager to leave it for the upcoming consideration and research. I believe the already active researchers or survivors have more to say on the topic. And now I want to speak more about seriousness of depression itself in my own experience, and yes, I do realize that it makes for quite an amusing transition. It may be amusing because I know how directive I may have sounded in my previous passage, though there I noted a more secular meaning and usage of the concept of something being depressive, which, as I noticed, that specialists and academics are mentioning sometimes too matter-of-factly to outline a difficult issue at hand. In fact, there is nothing amusing about it whatsoever, and that's exactly the point I want to address in the following minutes. I suffer from severe depression this whole time, and I would call it the biggest issue I'm personally facing in terms of work and research itself, or even moving towards my academic goal, to be more precise. In addition to typical symptoms, I'm constantly struggling from impossibility to even write about some specific parts of my experience when needed and when it's really important for me. And I'm regularly facing complications of performing almost any kind of action vital for my survival, integration, rehabilitation, and that growth which isn't post-traumatic yet. Everything just takes so much longer to begin, execute, and finish, especially at those vulnerable moments of receiving yet another portion of horrible news from home. If anything would be hindering my path and my future academic research, it's this aspect, on account of which I'm not deluding myself with feeble hopes, to be honest. That's why all I can do is learn now how to live with it and still perform. And maybe one day, when I'm trained enough, restored enough, my life replenished enough, this will be easier to cope with. Mentioning that I live in vicarious trauma non-stop, I do realize that even when I'm better, I'll still be facing it further on if I choose to work in the field. The only solution I can come up with right now is constant psychotherapy, ranging in different approaches, working more precisely on the acuteness of trauma with the help of evidence-based psychological approaches, and getting an ongoing support in any approach to one's liking. Main thing is to get a feeling of connection and know that you are doing something about it without leaving the problem to rot inside. Becoming a part of supportive community sharing same values matters a lot too. I would never underestimate the importance of belonging and feeling of being understood, the feeling of sharing a like experience and knowing you belong, knowing you are needed. After all, it is proved to be a very working antidote to aid against depression, a sense of community and an opportunity to help others. Mainly, that's what drives me to reach out, to tell my story, to listen to others and validate them, to choose a job where I can help others, because now, after received experience, I can't just resume my calm life. I literally feel worse if I don't do something to help others, and I feel a much needed release if I can contribute. At the same time, speaking about all the dark experience, in my case, this is a lot of loss, pain, grief, despair, passive suicidal states, loss of identity, dissociation from my own body and myself, inability to form relationships for now. This all has a quite peculiar potential. As horrible and unwanted as it is, still getting such experience kind of turns you into a fish that can live on the lowest levels of the ocean, so to say, withstanding the cold, pressure and darkness, which isn't such a bad skill after all. Main thing now is to train your flexibility, being able to free dive on those depths you can reach and resurface again, learning how to keep the balance and what techniques you need to follow for that. Because after all, being able to resurface to light after all those depths and darkness speaks of something. I do believe people who are able to do that now possess something very significant, something permanent, that is literally engraved on the skeleton of their psyche. There is a unique potential to draw a special inner power, a very specific resilience from those new levels of self. At times, I feel the presence of these new entities in me too, and it is something incomparable to how I used to live, feel and experience before. It's definitely bigger. For instance, I feel I can experience more at how strong and diverse I can love, see and feel things and people. I would like to end my sharing with a reminder that hopefully leaves a space for some kindness and a space for belief. Experience and time prove that we as human beings can do incredible things, incredibly wonderful, powerful and beautiful too. All we need is someone to tell us that, in case we are made to forget. Many times over all the hardest moments in my life, I wasn't told that, and many more times I was actually told that, but still I couldn't fully believe it. Definitely not at times of intense pain. After February 2022, I found myself in pain incomparable to anything I have ever experienced. And after February 2022, very often I appeared to be alone when I was desperate to hear this reminder myself. So where would I hear it from then? How could I remember? I couldn't. I did have some close friends next to me, but none of us would remember that, and none of us actually seemed sure it's possible at times like this. And if other less affected people would try to remind us of how life is beautiful and that all of it will pass, this either seemed as an extremely rude and untimely thing to say, or simply irritated us. We needed time to grieve. We needed time to grieve. And we needed time to respect our pain. And then the time did come when I felt in need for this reminder so much that I realized I must be the one who says it. I realized I wouldn't be able to get back to life if I don't regrow the faith in it. And I started accepting help, looking for it, wishing for it to actually help me, seeking it, and showing up for myself, adding to hope and belief jars bit by bit every day, so that eventually I could reteach myself to say it and hope for it too. So now I say it again. We as human beings can do incredible things, incredibly wonderful, powerful and beautiful too. just remember that even one lit candle helps immensely to see in the darkness, and potentially lit up other candles all around.